Gusala Kuchik is asking, what do you think about the argument that the U.S. is a one-click pony on foreign policy? What did I say? Oh, one tick.
One click, yeah.
One click. One trick pony on foreign policy regarding Iran, and that if we previously had more economic interdependency, we would be able to admit greater punishment to them now. Reza Aslan essentially said that isolation is why the IRGC controls the economy now, further preventing economic engagement. What do you think of his argument? I think it's nonsense. Do you want to go first, or do you want to?
I think you go first. You probably have a better insight on that.
Because the increased engagement in economics, like that was the theory. Like, we engage with economics with them, they will become more moderate, they will become more friendly. It didn't work. They became like when they removed the sanctions on Iran, the IRGC, the financial benefit that they got from that, like this is like usually that's how it works with most countries, right? More economic interdependency means that eventually radical movements with that country dies down and the country mellows down and becomes more normal and engaging with the rest of the world. In Iran, the financial benefits from the removal of the sanctions was spent on building proxies around the region. They became more aggressive, they became more hawkish, and they became taking more anti-Israeli and Western interests around the region. So it like we experimented with that and it didn't work. Also, this idea of like we need economic engagement so that we could use it to punish them. Well, that's what happened, right? The economic engagement was there and they misbehaved and they were taken away. Like you're saying, that's the point. The reason why there's no economic engagement, less economic engagement right now, is because they were used in the way that you're suggesting right now that they should be used. You can't just have it as a threat and never use it, because if they will call your bluff. If you never use it when countries misbehave, then they're going to know that it's not actually a threat, so it's not going to be effective as a threat.
I agree with you. So they had the similar worldview. They had the similar view about China as well. They said, okay, well, when the relationship thawed, they said, no, when they said that we let's just have trade with China, let's open up and let's go with capitalism, free market, the way of economics, and then let's see China eventually, as it catches up in terms of GDP and GDP per capita and education, then the Chinese people themselves will demand democracy. But that didn't happen. If anything, they became more authoritarian. So that was another gross miscalculation. So all the experts of China now, all the Western experts now, they all say the same thing. So it's the same thing with China, with Iran. It's a double-edged sword, but probably not. Maybe not so much as as it is the case with China, because China was always bound to be a superpower. It was just a sleeping dragon. Like, I mean, the population is huge and whatnot. But Iran is also not a small country, and Iran and even Iraq throughout the 90s, the West put all these sanctions on Iraq, and look what happened. I mean, people suffered. It didn't weaken Saddam Hussein's rule or grip on power in Iraq.
It did. I mean, if it wasn't, I don't agree with the sanctions on Iraq. I do agree with the sanctions on Iran, but the method of the sanctions of Iraq was like so brutal and killed like at least 500,000 children. Yeah. So, but at least the Iranian sanctions has loopholes for food and medicine, right? The sanctions on Iraq didn't. But it's not true that the sanctions on Iraq didn't weaken Saddam. Saddam would not be able to be toppled so easily when he was toppled if the sanctions were not in place.
But that was done by the U.S. military.
I know. But like the idea,
if there was no U.S. military, you reckon he would have been ousted?
Yeah, he would have been here, but it was so easy to remove him because of the sanctions.
I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, fine. But the main point remains what you said. That is there any other option? I don't think there is.
No.
The most you can do is you can apply sanctions, or you can invade. I don't think the U.S. can invade Iran. It's too big. And besides invasion, we've seen how these invasions end up, whether there's Afghanistan or Iraq, and now Russia invading Ukraine. You can see. I mean, it never works. Yes, the U.S. hasn't lost. But who's going to win? You're going to destabilize a country of, what's the population? 80 million, 90 million?
85.
85 million of Iran. And how are you going to destabilize a country of 85 million people, especially when the Islamic Republic is already getting weakened by the protests? Then why would you want to unite them? So there's no other way. I reckon that's...
When countries violate human rights laws and other international laws, there's only three options: doing nothing, invasion, or economic pressure. Okay,
Yes.
And doing nothing should not be an option. Invading doesn't seem to be an option. That leaves you with one option: economic pressure. You have to use that. There's no other way. People will suffer, but if you have to figure out how to do the sanctions more targeted, so less innocent people suffer. But not doing the sanctions should not be an option.
Or definitely not like the sanctions that U.S. imposed or the West imposed on Iraq when only kids were suffering. Medicine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get my best-selling book, Why There Is No God, for free. Click on the link for it in the description.